Hi, today we'll continue talking about how the way that we think changes our behavior. And just as a quick review, this is the way that our brain works. We have A, activating event, B, belief system, and C, emotional consequence. So A, B, C. Your thinking will be determined by your belief system. The belief system is what will determine the emotional consequence. And as we're talking about, you can have a group of people seeing or listening to the same thing, and their emotional consequence will be different based on their belief system. For example, I can say the name of the President of the United States. Some people, when they hear that name, man, they get upset. Some people actually get happy. Some others, they don't even care. Why the reaction is so different? Because it's based on their belief system. The activating event just triggered that belief system to give an emotional consequence. So if we want to change the emotional consequence, what we need to do, we need to change the way we believe. Now, according to the author of the book Feeling Good, he identifies 10 wrong ways of thinking. So if we think in a certain way and we keep on thinking in that way, that is actually going to change the connections in my brain and it will become easier. For example, let's say we have a grass of field, and as I am walking on that grass field in one particular area over and over, a pathway will be formed. If more people start walking in that pathway, then the pathway becomes wider. And as more people walk there, and now the horse walks there and so forth, this becomes so wide that it becomes one of the roads. That's actually how many of the roads actually started. Somebody first started walking, that created a little pathway, and then others walk, and it widened up, and so forth. The same thing happens in the level of your brain. As you repeat your thinking starts to become pathways, and the more you think on that direction, the more those pathways become more established. But here's the good news. What do we need to do in that grass field if we want the grass to grow where that pathway is? Yes, we need to stop walking there, then the grass can grow, and in that way, that pathway will disappear. That's the good news and bad news. Good news is that even things like addictions can be changed, because as you gain the victory and you start stimulating those pathways, then things can grow. So today I want to go and talk about these 10 wrong ways of thinking. If you think in these wrong ways, your brain becomes used to this, and we need to learn to overcome these distorted thinking ways. So let's talk about the first wrong way of thinking, what is called the all or nothing thinking. In this wrong way of thinking, we see life as black or white. And yes, there's a few things in this life that are black or white, but I can assure you, most things in life are not black and white. And most things have a different shadow. For example, people that have this perfectionistic type of attitude, they see life as black or white. There's nothing wrong of doing your best and trying to do, the best job that you can do, but there are people that actually commit crazy things as a result of this. I was in Korea. I teach a class there in a graduate PhD program, and I learned about a story there. This student was a good student. He was always, doing his best to try to get the top grades. And one time, he got a note, was not horrible, but was not the top note in one of the exams. What did he do because of that? He went and committed suicide. Why did he commit suicide? Because of the wrong belief system. In fact, suicide is the ultimate all or nothing thinking. You think that life will be better if you were not there, which is not true. Life is not and will not be better if you were not there. Rather, what we need to do, we need to understand that life has different shades. And if you don't get your black or white, it creates anxiety, it creates depression, it creates hopelessness. So we need to learn to understand that life is not black or white. Next way of wrong thinking, overgeneralization, in which you are creating a pattern based on few examples. I've seen people that say things like they are not, for example, believers, and one Christian does something bad for them. And they say, all the Christians are bad people. Look at what this guy did to me. Well, not necessarily. I'm sure there's some bad apples there, but to say that every single one of them is a bad apple based on just something that somebody did to you is not good enough. That would be overgeneralization. And it's interesting that people that are very smart, they tend to use overgeneralization the most. For example, there was a story I was reading in a book recently about this. This student, he was in a dorm, and as he was in that dorm at the university type of age, he started noticing a very pretty girl. But he was kind of the shy type, so it was very hard for him to approach her. But one day in the morning, as he was having breakfast with his friends at the dorm, he told him, "Look, today I'm gonna ask this girl to go out with me on a date." So he mustered all the courage and he went to contact her. And later in the day, he comes with all this sad face and broken spirit. And his friends ask him, "What did she say to you that make you feel so horrible?" And you know what he says? "I think I'm destined to be lonely and never marry for the rest of my life." And they say, "Why? Why did you say that?" He said, "She said that the time that I had proposed her to go out with me, that she was busy. I'm destined to be alone for the rest of my life." Come on, look, it was just one time, and you tried one time. The overgeneralization mistake that he has are two. Number one, that this lady is never gonna change her mind. She always gonna say no. And the second overgeneralization mistake that he has is that every woman on planet Earth has the same desires as this particular girl, so every single girl is going to say no to him, which is again an overgeneralization type of mistake. So watch out in your thinking when you say, oh, always or never. Beware, you may be falling in the wrong way of thinking of overgeneralization. Mental filter. Mental filter in which you are seeing life in a distorted way. Like glasses that are dirty, they distort your eyesight and you don't see the true reality. Therefore, mental filter is when we have those wrong ways of seeing life and those dirty glasses through which we see life don't give us an accurate view of reality. So, how do I know if I have a mental filter? You can identify mental filters by asking others. How do you see this? What's your opinion about this? Do you see the issue the same way that I see it? See, by consulting others, you get a different perspective. And many times, things that I thought, oh, they were like this particular way, they're actually not like that. Since my belief system is wrong, the emotional consequence of that trigger is wrong. Therefore, we need to have that open mind, consult, talk to others, see other countries' points of views, and in that way I can identify mental filters. So look for evidence contrary to the way you see things and challenge your thinking. In that way, you can see if the way you see things is correct or not. As Will Rogers says, it's not what we don't know that hurts us so much. It is what we know for sure that just ain't so. So be careful when these entrenched ways of thinking have changed my belief system. Be careful, that can give you a negative emotional consequence. Next, distortion, disqualifying the positive. And this is not like mental filter. You know, mental filter, everything is distorted because the glasses are dirty. You don't see the reality very well. But disqualifying the positive, you are focusing just on the negative side of things instead of seeing the whole picture. It's like a rose. You know, a rose is a beautiful flower. But I can focus on the thorns and not see the beautiful flower and get upset about those thorns there. In the same way, what we need to do, we need to make sure that we're seeing all the facts, then we can see the whole reality. For example, a lady that just graduated from accountant and she gets a job in a company, it's paying good, and she is doing her best in her job, and in fact she gets mentioned as the employee of the month because she is a hard worker. But you know what happened? The economy is not good and they have to tell some people to go home because the company is having some financial issues. Well, this new employee is asked to go back to her home and not work anymore because it's easier to remove new employees than those that have worked for longer periods of time. And you know, she is there at home, all depressed. She doesn't want to find another job or anything. So her friend goes to visit her and said, hey, what's going on? You know, there's other companies needing accountants. How come you don't go and find another job? And you know what her answer? Look at me. I got laid over because I'm a bad employee. I think I'm just going to stay here at home and be depressed. See, she is disqualifying the positive. She was even awarded the employee of the month. She could actually show that to her future employees and they will be happy to hire her. As Henry Ford said, think you can, think you can't. Either way, you'll be right. He does not believe who does not live according to his belief. Next one, mind reading. Mind reading is when I try to think that I know what the other person is thinking before I ask him. You know, only God knows what other people think. And the funny thing is that we tend to do this with people we don't know. For example, you go on the bus and you're walking to try to find a spot to sit down, and you say, oh, I don't want to sit down there. That person is very bad. How do you know he's a very bad person? Have you talked to him? Have you ever met him? See, we mind read and we get ourselves in trouble. In fact, interesting statistic. Who does more mind reading, males or females? You know who does? Both. Both males and females do mind reading. So watch out when you say things like, do you know what I mean? Well, they don't know what you mean. That's why you need to ask them. You would never do that unless I know they're talking about me right now. If he really cared, he wouldn't do that. See, these are wrong ways of thinking. Don't mind read. What do I need to do? I need to find out what the other person thinks. And how do I find that? Well, you ask him, hey, what do you think about this? Or how do you see this? And so forth. I cannot know what other people is thinking unless I ask them for. And there is under mind reading a subtype that is called jumping to conclusions, in which you take a conclusion without really thinking things through. As Stephen Wright says, a conclusion is what you come to when you are tired of thinking about something. And no, that is not the way that we should come to our conclusions. So we need to gather all the facts, we need to see all the issues, then we can jump and we can take those right decisions. Next way of cognitive distortion, the fortune teller error, in which you think that you know the future before the future arrives. Again, this is something that only God Almighty knows. I don't know the future. I wish I would know it, but I don't know it. So there are people that cause themselves all kinds of anxiety and problems because they think they know tomorrow before tomorrow arrives. And for example, like a patient of mine that I was talking to recently, she was telling me how she was so anxious that she didn't have the money to pay for her rent for the next month, that she was even losing her sleep. And that was affecting her productivity at work. And she had all this tension in her back. And it was so stressful because she was not going to have enough money for the next month. Well, guess what? As the end of the month started coming, boom, 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 the funds came there. She had more than enough to pay not only that rent, but even part of the rent of next month, and things went perfectly well. See, what was the need of her of stressing so much without dealing with the fact that we don't know the future? You need to learn to live one day at a time. I don't know tomorrow, and the past is gone, so I'm going to close those doors. I'm going to focus on living today my best. So when people say something, oh, I know he won't do it because he will think it's too hard, that's fortune teller. Oh, I am never going to be able to overcome this problem. How do you know that? Have you seen the future? Do you know if you were able to overcome it or not? I know physicians of my friends of mine that know about the power of lifestyle and diet and exercise, yet they don't prescribe these things because they say, no, I'm not going to take the time to do it because the person is not going to be able to do it. How do you know? Have you given them the opportunity to do that? So beware of fortune teller error. Next one, magnification and minimization, in which you are making something small, something that is small, man, you make such a big deal, or something that it should be dealt with, you minimize it and you don't deal about it. And you know, one of the most known issues that can really hurt somebody is the issue of pride. And that was the problem with King Nebuchadnezzar. He says, oh, it's not this great Babylon that I have built. That was based on a cognitive distortion. And that once pride is hurt, it can create all kinds of problems. Next one, emotional reasoning, in which you try to reason with your feelings instead of facts. And you know, people, things like laziness are emotional reasoning. The person wakes up in the morning and it says, I don't feel like going to work today, so I won't do it. Or, I don't feel like following a good healthy diet today, so I'm just going to eat junk food. See, that's emotional reasoning. You are letting your feelings be the guide instead of truth and reason. So beware of emotional reasoning. Next one. The next cognitive distortion is labeling and mislabeling, in which you put labels on others and yourself. There's many people that I see that have wrong self-labels. They say, oh, I am dumb, oh, I'm this, I'm not intelligent, I'm this and that. And as you put the wrong label and you start repeating the wrong label, you start devaluating yourself and you think that you're no good, etc., etc. Or things like racism, that's the origin of it, prejudice, in which the person puts certain label on certain ethnic group and they repeat that and they start to believe in that wrong way of thinking. And finally, the 10th cognitive distortion is called personalization, in which you start taking the guilt and the problem that somebody else is of. For example, recently I had a patient that came to stop smoking. And here I am, I spent a good half an hour explaining that person how to stop smoking. And I gave him details and tips and all kinds of things to empower the person to stop smoking. And then I see the person a couple of weeks later and ask him, hey, did you stop smoking? And they said, oh, I didn't even try to stop smoking. And I'm like, man, I'm such a bad physician. I cannot even help somebody stop smoking. See, that's personalization. It is not actually my fault. I did my best to encourage and to give the information to the patient. The patient is the one that needs to decide that. Now, this cognitive behavioral therapy, which is called what we just learned today, is not something that came out in the 1960s and so forth. Yes, Beck and Ellis, they start to standardize this, but this actually comes all the way from the Bible. In the book of Philippians 4:8, it has a wonderful guideline of how I should decide if a thought is worth having or not. See, we have the ability, as we are thinking of things, to stop that thinking or to encourage a certain thought. And how do we decide which thought to keep and which one to discard? Use the following guideline. What I suggest is that you write this Bible verse on a piece of paper, carry it with you, repeat it throughout the day, and learn this Bible verse by memory. So next time that you're facing with a decision and you want to decide, should I keep or not this thought, use this guideline, which says, finally, brethren, whatever things are truth, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue, and if there is any praiseworthy, meditate on these things. We had recently a patient of ours. This patient was desperate. The boyfriend had left her. The son needed a surgery. She didn't have insurance. And because she lost the second income, she was not able to make up the payments for her house, and she lost her house. And she was totally depressed and she couldn't see any hope in the future. So we started working with her, teaching her about these 10 cognitive distortions and how to have the victory over wrong thinking. And it was fascinating. As she finished the program and went home, number one, she was able to get a very nice job. 2, her parents said, why don't you move with us, and in that way you can save money and so forth. 3, she was able to qualify for special insurance for uninsured children, and they were able to do the procedure that her son needed. And actually very soon she had enough money to make the down payment for a new beautiful house, even better than the one that she had. And at the beginning, when she came to our program, her future looked hopeless. There was nothing to look forward to and so forth. How come in a few months things changed completely, and now she was having a good time and she saw hope? Well, it started by changing her thinking. So if you practice these principles, it's not natural, this will change your brain and this will literally change your life.